On a night where all it would have taken was one, the Edmonton Oilers couldn't even do that. Play the music.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This is my 10th season doing digital hockey content, my third as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, you can visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. So on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, we've got micro and macro topics to address. So to start out, we're going to explore why hockey is a game of runs, why it's a sport of sustained pushes, give and takes, and flexibility. Our second segment, we will pivot to talking about why the Oilers roster construction is fundamentally not working, centered around the Connor McDavid-Draisaitl tandem. And then we'll tie a bow on this episode talking about why the Oilers' lack of emotion, especially in games like this, is becoming hard to ignore. So to start out, we all understand that sports are, at some point, a reflection of life, and something that I have really, over the last couple of years, as I've gotten more professional and serious about my sports media work, I've really gained an appreciation for how they're different from each other, what makes the feel different, what makes the feel special. And something I've really come around on, especially in hockey, and it's actually, weirdly enough, similar to the conversation in soccer. And there's a lot less scoring in soccer, and there's a lot more sustained possession. There's a lot less back and forth, unless you're watching like little kids play soccer. But in hockey, we are trying incredibly hard to get one of these into a net. We are trying incredibly hard to get one of those into a net past a goalie whose job it is to prevent that from happening. And there are a variety of ways you can try and create that offense. You can create off of the rush. You can dump the puck in, chase it, go get it, win it, sustain a forecheck. You can gain the zone with speed. You can set a pass across the center lane and try and get the goalie moving left to right. There are so many possibilities. And funny enough, something that you come to understand is all of these possibilities, all of these choices, they have different recourses. They have different downstream flows. You talk about how one of the hard parts about being an adult is figuring out what you want to eat for dinner every day. That same kind of idea here. You can try and be a rush-based offense. You can try and be a cycle offense. You can try and be a hybrid offense. But at a certain point, you are going to have to make decisions. And those decisions aren't always going to be easy, and they aren't always going to be beneficial. But getting to the crux of this conversation, the Oilers played a pretty decent hockey game tonight. When you go under the hood, when you talk about possession, when you talk about game control, the problem becomes efficiency. The problem becomes converting those chances you created. So the reason I say hockey is a game of runs, it's a game of pushes, is you have to pick and choose when you're going to concert your effort. It is too physically taxing of a sport to be full throttle all of the time, especially when you only have certain players in your lineup who are materially capable of making a difference on their own. Now, as a cog in a system, a full functioning unit of 5 can definitely contribute, generate offense. That's not the question here. But you only get X number of chances in a given hockey game. Tonight, the Oilers were credited with 58 scoring chances in this game. 58, nearly 60, high, significantly higher than what they have been generating. The problem is, a majority of that offense is what we would classify as low danger or not particularly valuable offense, which means the Oilers have the puck in the Minnesota end, and the shot map will align with that. Your eye test will watch with that. The Oilers had the puck in the Minnesota zone for prolonged stretches of time. They were able to get off to a fast start. The Oilers were credited with the first 4 shots on goal in this game and even more scoring chances than that. But the Wilds were able to take the air out of the balloon. They draw that power play early. And even though they don't score on that power play, they get their feet under them and they start to make their counterattack. They make their reverse push. And that's the real challenge as a hockey team, is having that that malleability to follow where the game is going, because the Oilers got off to, as I said, a really solid start. This is a team that is not playing consistently good hockey, and slow incremental progress is sorely welcome. So the fact that they got off to a good start was encouraging. Hell, the fact they killed off the penalty, I was looking around in my room saying, okay, we're off to a good start. We took out their power play. Minnesota's got a pretty good power play. We put ourselves in a position to succeed. And then, unfortunately, you have the one thing happen that deflates all of the air out of the balloon. You get a floating screen off a faceoff where, realistically, and I think it's fair to say, you want Stuart Skinner to have that puck. He has a chance to make a play on that puck. The floating screen obstructs his view partially, and Jonas Brodin, who is more known for his defense, one of the great defensive defensemen of the last 5 to 10 years in the NHL, gets himself one home, an absolute hammer of a shot. So while I do think Skinner probably should have had it in the context of not being a difficult save, wicked shot, talented player, okay. At 1-0, you feel really deflated because you came out of the gate strong, you killed off the penalty, and then Minnesota gets the lead. And you were a team in Edmonton who has struggled to score all season long. And you make pushes. Don't get me wrong. Second period, 19-11 in scoring chances. Third period, 26-12 scoring chances. Ton of zone time. But when we get to the high danger part of this conversation, 3-0 in the second, and then Minnesota had 4 to Edmonton's 3 in the third period. Of course, these numbers are all at 5-on-5. The majority of the game is played at 5-on-5. So when we're talking about these underlying numbers, that's the meat and potatoes of it all. The Oilers played a passably good hockey game tonight. Most nights, if you play the way Edmonton did, you're going to win. Just matter of factly. If you get 55, 56% of the high danger chances in the expected goals in a given game, if you outshoot a team by 7 to 10, you outchance them by 10, those are all metrics that would indicate you played a pretty good hockey game. But because the rate of offense was very inefficient, a lot of point shots, a lot of perimeter shots, a lot of shots that don't even get through to the net, you're getting zone time, but it's not very efficient. You know, with the Oilers tonight, we're a red zone team that struggles in football, where you move between the 20s easy because there's plenty of space. But once you cross that 20-yard line, you get to the green zone, like Tom Coughlin used to call it. That's where your offense dries up, because you got to be able to run the ball. You got to be able to throw the ball. You got to be unpredictable. And right now, the Oilers as a unit, it is not working. And speaking of not working, coming up after our first break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, I'm going to tell you why the Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl partnership isn't working nearly as well as it has in the past. Frankly, the Oilers are in real offensive trouble. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, my energy, and even my mood. That's why I've been using Drip Drop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. Drip Drop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands, using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. I love using Drip Drop as part of my daily routine. I've been trying to get ahead of my New Year's resolutions, getting off to better starts to my days, building momentum early, try not to pick up my phone until at least a half hour, 40 minutes after I wake up. First thing I'm doing, I'm pounding 8 to 12 ounces of water, which I am adding Drip Drop to. I'm really a big fan of the peach flavor. And most importantly, it tastes good. It doesn't taste sugary. It doesn't taste fake. It tastes like juice. Hydration has always been non-negotiable for me. Drip Drop takes it to another level. And right now, Drip Drop is offering listeners of this podcast 20% off their first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off your first order. Stock up now for that winter bulk and keep your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. Thank you for making Locked On Oilers your first listen of the day, and thank you so much for helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Okay, friends, real quick, one good thing that happened in this game, nothing disastrous. This was a well-played game that the Oilers just weren't as efficient in, and Minnesota, who is on a bit of a hot streak, who has young players like Jesper Wallstedt playing really well. That's what you need. When you are a team that generally is getting bounces to go your way, it's because you have guys playing well. And don't get me wrong, the Oilers have guys who are putting up stats, but it is not the same. And that naturally segues us into the McDavid and Draisaitl conversation, because the Oilers are constructed around one core principle, that we have 2 of the 5 best hockey players on the planet, and we are going to win their minutes. Whether that's apart or together, we are unequivocally going to win their minutes. And right now, going into tonight, it was 9-9. The Oilers had outscored the Oilers and their opponents both had 9 goals when McDavid and Draisaitl were out there together. McDavid without Draisaitl has been outscored 16-12. Draisaitl without McDavid is outscoring opponents 16-9. And then with neither on the ice, the Oilers have been outscored 33-13. Those numbers are pretty bad. And some of it is a product of goaltending. They have gotten really poor goaltending in their minutes when they overlap. I have it written down here. They have gotten 861.5 goaltending from the Stuart Skinner, Calvin Pickard tandem when they've been on the ice together this year. But bigger picture, I wanted to pull you back and I wanted to give you a little bit of context. So forgive me while the next few minutes sound like me reading from the phone book, but I do think it's important you hear this. So like we said, 9-9 in goals for and against, 52.9%. 33-13 for everybody other than McDavid-Draisaitl on the ice, 28.26%. Last year, for the full season, McDavid and Draisaitl together outscored opponents 31-18, 63%. So we're talking a 10% decrease year over year, already notable. Then you go to the depth. Last year, the non-McDavid-Draisaitl minutes, the depth outscored 88-66, 42.8%. 14% worse this year than last year. 2 years ago, 64.41%. The Oilers outscored opponents 38-21 when McDavid and Draisaitl overlapped. The depth, 48.87%, 65-68. The year before that, McDavid-Draisaitl 57.14%. The depth outscore opponents 74-60. Make no bones about it, friends. The Oilers roster construction is not working. The Oilers are not unequivocally dominating the McDavid-Draisaitl minutes to the degree that they can afford to play them together as much as they have this year. And that's really the turd in the punch bowl, for lack of a better expression. I know that's like a 2004 sitcom type expression, but I don't know what else to tell you. If Connor and Leon aren't going to outscore opponents together when they play together, what are they going to do when they're apart? And like I said, McDavid is being outscored at 5-on-5 this year so far without Draisaitl. And yeah, he's missed Hyman for the first month and change of the season, missed Nugent-Hopkins for a few weeks there. But by and large, the Oilers are not working. And the goaltending is 2 guys. It's pretty easy to point your finger at that. You notice on an aggregate level that the offense isn't as dangerous, the defense is a little more leaky. Okay. You point the finger at the coaching staff. It's not as easy to point the finger at Connor and at Leon for the way this season is unfolding, because as great as they both are, and I'm not saying they're having bad seasons, but in relation to what they have done historically, what the Oilers have come to expect from them, and what they have built the team around, is the idea that when you get in these situations where you need a goal, you're going to play Connor and Leon every 3 shifts for the final 20 minutes of the game. They're going to tie the game, and then we can go back to our normal lines and pairs so we don't have to overwork them. But at this point, I really don't see a solution to the Oilers' problems because they don't have the horses. And I like a lot of the pieces that are here. I really like the 2-year journey Vasily Podkolzin's been on. I think Nuge is still decent. I think Hyman has been a breath of fresh air since entering the lineup. I like the spurts of Matthew Savoy, even though he hasn't been getting on the sheet all that regularly. There just aren't a lot of proven goal scorers on this team. And as we've been talking about for much of the first 2 months of the season, and my everydayers are probably sick of it at this point, you let like 60 goals go out the door in the offseason between Corey Perry and Connor Brown and Arvidsson and Jeff Skinner and Evander Kane. You let 50 to 60 goals pretty much guaranteed walk out the door. And look, some of it was money. And when you have to get cheaper, you don't get to pay. You are paying for certainty in an uncertain world, to quote Pacino and Two for the Money. Great movie, by the way. Out of its mind. The acting, it's a little too hammy. It's a little jump the shark, but it's probably the last great Pacino performance until The Irishman. So food for thought on your Wednesday afternoon, morning, evening, whenever you happen to be listening to this show. The Oilers don't have certainty in this group. They are hoping, they are waiting for guys like Trent Frederick, like Andrew Mangiapane to get going, to perform based on the pro scouting evaluations that the Oilers obviously produced, to deduce that this group had more to get. And that's where this becomes a bit of an awkward conversation, because as we've discussed a lot over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, 12 of the 20 skaters on this team that regularly play have some form of no trade protection. And to get the elephant, you're not trading Connor, you're not trading Leon, you're not trading Bouchard. You're not trading Ekholm, you're not trading Nugent-Hopkins, you're not trading Jake Wallman. After that, sure, I trade Nurse, I trade Mangiapane, trade Henrique. There are plenty of guys on this team I would be open to trading or moving in some capacity to try and create cap space to make something else happen. But the Oilers are not getting what they're paying for. And some of it is goaltending for sure. 861.5 save percentage in the McDavid-Draisaitl overlap minutes. But those are guys who are going to be pushing. And it goes back to what we talked about in the first segment, and we can tie a bow on this segment with that thought. Connor and Leon are going to spend the vast majority of their shift in the other team's offensive end. They are going to cycle the puck. They're going to hold it down there. They're going to look for one or two really good scoring chances. And they have the capacity to hold the puck down at the other end for 45 seconds, minute and a half. And they're going to get one or two decent looks. The problem then becomes, and why, at least in part, the team save percentage is so low, they get strung out. Because the Oilers are going to have 3 or 4 guys in and around the net mouth trying to find that tap in, that backdoor play. And when that play gets broken up, because you're going to have 3 or 4 guys down in tight to the net, if you can win that loose puck as the defending team, you spring it going the other way and you have your jailbreak opportunity. You get more dangerous offense against that type of group. And it's not an ideal way to play. You don't want to be hemmed in your own end for a minute and a half against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Zach Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Evan Bouchard. That's miserable. That is as challenging an environment as can be. But if you have the capacity to withstand that pressure the way Minnesota does, because they're a well-coached defensive team, because Jesper Wallstad is proven to be a pretty solid young goalie in this league, you give up those chances going the. And I know tonight's not a great example of that. They gave up a goal on a set play off a face-off, but at large, that's why the goal disparity for the season so far is notable and worth talking about, and why it's gotten this whole second segment. But we are going to take our second and final break of today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Oilers' lack of emotion and why I think it's starting to become a problem. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play. Suddenly, everything is different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or a momentum swinging turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust after every play. player props as guys heat up. You can bet individual props like next touchdown scorer, drive results, game totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. Tomorrow night, absolute barn burner in the NFL. Cowboys and Lions. The Cowboys, huge win on Thanksgiving over the Chiefs. The Lions, a tough loss to the Packers. The Lions kind of fighting for their playoff lives, are 3-point home favorites to Dak and the Cowboys. I'm going to give you a little secret. I'm probably going to be in on the Cowboys on Thursday night. Dark horse team to make some noise in the postseason. So if you want to be in the middle of the action, visit FanDuel.com and place live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the games moves fast, and so can you. Thank you so much to everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. And I say this a lot, and after games like tonight where you might have fallen asleep how bored you were, I just want to say thanks, man. I understand how many options you have as far as your content diet. If you just want to mindlessly scroll TikTok, there are thousands upon thousands of podcasts about every subject under the sun. Taking the time every few days, even if you're not an everydayer, it's greatly appreciated, and it means a lot, and it keeps the lights on for the show. So you can tell I'm starting to run out of ideas as far as how to fix this team because the results are becoming more and more disconcerting. And something that really stuck with me tonight, there wasn't a lot of desperation from this group. And it's a very fine line to walk between desperate and motivated and hungry and driven. All of those buzzwords can be lumped in as synonyms in certain contexts. But you need to have a certain level of desperation as a player on a team that is not performing up to expectations. And different players should be graded on a different scale. I don't think it's realistic to compare what Connor McDavid can do to what Matthias Janmark can do. But there are so many little sequences and segments in a given game that just have me rolling my eyes. The number of point shots, the number of times a guy enters the zone with possession, dumps the puck into no one in particular, or tries to funnel a puck through the center lane through 2 or 3 defenders, or the cross seam pass to nobody, or the pass to nobody, the hope pass that goes to no one in particular and hopes someone else can make a play. These are all little components and tell the story of a team that is struggling to figure out what it's supposed to do. There is talent present here. There is a top 6 of an NHL team between McDavid, Nuge, Hyman, Draisaitl, Podkolzin, whether you want to do Savoy. We know it's going to be a while for Roslovic to return. They definitely could have used his speed tonight. I think that could have helped, especially in transition. But that's an NHL caliber top 6. Even with Savoy, who is figuring it out, and I definitely could see an argument for maybe some more AHL time if the Oilers feel they're particularly desperate. That's an NHL caliber top 6. That is a group that should be able to score 2 to 4 goals with relatively ease most nights. And the Oilers couldn't put one on the board tonight. And there was such a lack of determination. And that's the difference. There is a difference between desperation and determination. When you are determined, you are making your own luck. How many times over the last 2 years have we watched the Oilers pull a game entirely out of their butt? Had no business winning. You had Skinner give up 3 goals on 22 shots and the Oilers still won 4-3. How many times did you watch McDavid-Draisaitl and Hyman go over the wall every 3 shifts, like guys on a mission, skipping the 4th line, double shifting, McDavid killing penalties, whatever it took, the Oilers were getting it out of their guys. They were finding ways to win. They were making their own luck because they were so determined. They were so driven. Now, that air of desperation that is creeping over this group is a group that has no confidence. The desperate are those without reprieve, port in any storm. The Oilers are just happy to have the puck a little bit in the offensive zone. Yeah, we're going to take 58 scoring chances. Only 7 of them are going to be dangerous and have a reasonable chance of going in, and we're not going to score, but we're going to have a ton of possession, and we're going to do all the right things. We're going to try and win puck battles. And I thought the Oilers were a little bit better tonight on the 50-50 pucks. And that's entirely anecdotal. That's a night-to-night basis. You can't have full tilt every game, every night. That's just not the way hockey works. But I am running out of ways to explain the Oilers are in trouble. We can keep waiting for the Connor nuclear game, the Leon nuclear game, the depth to come back, the Oilers to make a trade. You can keep waiting, and it might never come. If you're familiar with waiting for Godot, at a certain point, Godot is not showing up. It's just the two guys talking to each other back and forth, and I think, unfortunately, that might be where we're at with the Oilers this season. And you keep hearing the murmurs. Well, we don't know if the Oilers are going to make a goalie trade in season. We might wait till the summer. You can do whatever you want, Stan Bowman. But remember, you miss the playoffs, everything's on the table. You go out in the first round, 4 or 5 games, everything's on the table. And with each passing day, you wait to make a move, whether that's a goalie or a defenseman or a top 6, whatever you think this team needs. Each passing day, the responsibility on the guys who are here after the whatever move you do make is only getting more challenging. With each passing day, the number of standings points you're going to need out of your final X number of games is only going to keep going up. Yesterday, it was a 612, 613 points percentage. After today, as games are wrapped up, I'm sure it's going to be 616 or 617. And that doesn't sound like a lot. But when we get to March, we get to April, and the Oilers are 6 points back of a playoff spot with 4 games to play, and they have no margin for error, and they're playing against or they're in direct competition for those spots with teams who are still trying to win games because they want to get in too, they're going to end up in a borderline impossible situation. And it's why you got to keep demanding. It's why you got to keep pounding the desk. And look, I know the internet's not real. I know collective action as a social cause is effectively dead. The Oilers miss the playoffs. You're going to see some social action. You're going to see some collective action. I'm not ready to write this team off entirely as a playoff team. I feel pretty confident in saying this is not a Stanley Cup-caliber team. And I know they went on the crazy heater 2 years ago after coming out of the gate ice cold, coming off of injuries, guys getting back in. All of that is nice. Those are great anecdotes. We'll always have those memories. This team can't score. And because it can't score, the defense needs to be perfect. Because the defense needs to be perfect, the goaltending needs to be able to make up for whatever the defense can't. And the Oilers don't have NHL-caliber goaltending right now. They didn't play poorly tonight, but good teams find ways to win games like this. Their best players swing them on those coin flip plays that determine who wins and loses. And right now, the Wild have a goalie who is playing really well out of the gate. Matt Zuccarello, returning from injury, has gotten Kaprizov back to his form. Brock Faber's gotten going after an ice-cold start. The Oilers, they didn't lose badly. That's really all I got, man. That'll do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much to everyone that made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Oilers wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. Leave the show a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify if you could be so kind. It really would mean a lot. And of course, be sure to check out Locked On NHL and Locked On NHL Game Night, where the guys are breaking down every game every night until the Stanley Cup champion is crowned in June. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.